Hello, I'm Nalini McNabb, and I'd like to share with you something that I see coming up in the human collective, particularly through the unconscious. This is a particular setup for the old cycle, the old world, whatever you want to call it, the paradigm that is dissolving, changing, shifting, however you perceive that. Before we incarnate, we have an agenda. Everything has an agenda. We do too. And so we set up the parameters. We choose our circumstances, not the details, of course, but the circumstances. And we choose what we're coming in to learn, what we're coming in to learn from, what we're coming in to experience. And in a lot of cases, right now in this incarnation, what we think we're here to fix. Now, is there anything inherently wrong in any of that? No, of course not. Some of them are a little outdated, a little obsolete. And everyone's agendas about everything are about to be obsolete. Source is taking care of that. So the agenda, the incarnational agenda, is one thing. For most of you who will watch this, it was an agenda to help in some way. Nothing wrong with that. The form of it is changing, as we're all seeing. We're all having to scramble or not, or just do things differently or offer things differently because the energies are changing. So that's one side of this. The other side is when we incarnate. Sometimes it begins in utero. Sometimes it's in very, very, very early childhood. There will be an incident, an event that will be perceived by the fetus or the infant or toddler body as traumatic. We will experience trauma. This can create PTSD later on. We know about that. What this is a setup to further our agenda. So the wounding sets up making us sure that we will follow our agenda. The agenda actually set up the wounding, not the exact details or circumstances, of course, but set up the fact that we would need to have something like that happen. And they feed on one another. So we can't just manage the wounding, is a whole different thing, but we can't just clear the wounding because the agenda's still there. We can't just clear the agenda because the wounding's still there. This is a deadly embrace, a double bind. The whole thing needs to be offered back to source so that we're clear, and or at least the charge of states are gone from this, and we can move forward into our new incarnational experience. So how do we do this? Well, the easiest way, especially if you've done a lot of work, is to sit with it, meditate, just quiet your mind, and ask your body. Our bodies know. Ask your body, what is the key experience? Now, as you contemplate this particular thing that's going on, your body will probably be flashing up its little vignettes, its little pictures in your field. Don't take them at face value. So I had something happen over this last weekend, and it triggered this process, I know, so that I could see it. But I had a vignette pop up from when I was probably about 3. And this event is not unprocessed. I've looked at it. I have forgiven it. I believed I had let it go. I believed my body had let it go. And that's actually true. So when one of these things comes up, don't necessarily assume that, oh, it's still there and I have to process it. That is the agenda's way of keeping it in place. So instead, just look at it like, okay, well, how does that play into this dynamic? How does that play into this agenda? And before I could get to that, what I asked Source was, okay, what's this about? Because, not uncovered territory. And so I got a second event that happened when I was about 14 with not the event itself necessarily, but the circumstances and the outcome and what it instantiated. And the pattern that was put in place was, even though I was being abused. Not the way that most other children are. No victim stance here, nothing like that. Just my body experienced this as trauma. And then when I ran to the caretaker involved, the parent, I was not believed. I was actually gaslighted. And I was told, well, what did you do wrong? So, parenting is a tough job. And I'm not blaming anybody here. The thing that happened when I was 14, after the fact, the same thing happened. Oh, well, this didn't really happen. That's only how it seemed to you. And I remember, well, I think the bruises speak for themselves. But here's the important part. None of that matters. So what I was shown as I was looking at it this weekend was also the agenda that I had come in with to spread light, to show other people or others that they have made these agreements and here's what they've done. And it's all ego. It has nothing to do with source. And this wasn't from a judgment or a complaint or critiquing kind of place. It was, look, you can be free. But I saw, I thought I had given that agenda up years ago. Not so. At least in my body, there was a piece of it running that said, I love this person. It was love-based. I truly love this being. And it breaks my heart that they still have this dynamic running. And so I sat with it and I said, all right, this is actually, what I'm feeling is actually love-based. Only maybe my way of dealing with it, because who has a right to tell anyone else what they're here to do? Maybe my way of dealing with it isn't so great. So, Source, could you please dissolve this? So what's important for you in all of this is there will be bits in your childhood. Some people have, trauma experiences that make mine seem like tissue paper. And then some people have agendas that are a lot stronger than mine. Most of us, if you're watching this, we have agendas to be of service in some way. So the first thing we have to let Source dissolve is the definition of service. What does that mean to us? And trust me, that part of us does not want to let that go. But it's not going to dissolve that love-based impulse. What it's going to dissolve is the form it has taken because everything on this planet is changing. Everything is different. All of the taking on, carrying, and holding on patterns are basically obsolete in their current forms. So, if you don't know, if Source will show you the little memory things that need to come up. If you don't know what your agenda is, and I'm really betting that you do, just sit with your body, ask your body, what is this agenda that's being played out? And when you see it, you'll see, okay, here's the dance. The wound feeds the agenda feeds the wound. And the wound has probably been repeated because we put our lessons on, autopilot rerun just to make sure that we learn them. That's really the only reason. It's not because we're bad or good. It's just we want to make sure. I came in to learn this or work with this or save or fix this. So we get lessons that say, well, here's one way you could do that. And if you're going to do all the ways, this is going to repeat a lot of times. It doesn't have to. And especially now, all of that is so broken, it's so dissolved, that it's a really good idea to let this go. So I'm hoping that this made sense to you, that listening to this will help you to dissolve it. If you have studied with me for a long time or come to any of my classes, all of this material is in Embodying Fluidity. The most important ones are the pre-birth, the original imprint release, and the agreements on how they work. There's a module on that in my Embodying Fluidity online course. It's self-paced because most of us right now actually not only want to, but sort of need to learn on our own. We need the lessons to complete. Keep the wisdom, let the lesson go. So the self-paced course is there with some coaching options, or there's a chapter on this in my Becoming Oneness book, if this will be helpful to you. The truth is you have what you need, and what you don't need anymore is this double bind of agenda and wound that just play off each other. And even if you've done, I've done all the work, I've cleared that wound. Good for you. I seriously hope you have. Many people have. But have you got both sides of it? Because otherwise, this is what they do. And that holds us into our old cycle parameters, into a certain paradigm that we have lived within, which is simply obsolete and not useful and not as love-based as we can be, as we are capable of being. So I sincerely hope this was helpful, and thank you for watching.